Hey everybody, my name is Amy Quest and I'm a public health major here at FGCU. I'm here to talk to you today about pollution and the issue of eutrophication, specifically cyanobacteria, better known as blue-green algae, and how it is impacting the community where we live and why we have a reason for hope.
Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Baldrich and I'm a legal studies major here at FGCU. Today I'm going to discuss pollution in the form of microplastics and nanoparticles, how they enter the waterways, the potential hazards these plastics pose to the environment, and a local reason for hope in the monitoring and removing of these microplastics and nanoparticles from our oceans.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Jim Clark, and I'm a marketing major here at FGCU. Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about red tide, how it actually gets into our waterways here locally in the Southwest and Fort Myers area, how it affects our ecosystem, and a couple different organizations that are fighting against the red tide concern and how they are doing so.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Alex Casolis, and I'm going to be talking to you about water pollution. I'm going to be going over the BP oil spill, some local problems with water pollution, some solutions, and also some reasons for hope.
The Sustainable Development Goals are built on decades of work by countries in the United Nations. The current set of 17 goals were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. The current Sustainable Development Goals that encompass our topic of pollution are SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, specifically Target 6.6, SDG 12, Ensure Sustainable Consumption and Production Patterns, specifically Targets 12.4 and 12.5, and SDG 14, Life Below Water, specifically Targets 14.1 and 14.3. Project Drawdown is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2014 that seeks to help the world reach drawdown, the future point in time when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline. The Project Drawdown solutions that encompass our topic of pollution are coastal wetland protection. By protecting coastal wetlands, inhibits the degradation and safeguards carbon sinks. Coastal wetland restoration, restoring mangrove forests, salt marshes, and seagrass beds to health, revive carbon sequestration, and nutrient management. Excess nutrients lead to harmful algae blooms, which cause oxygen-depleted oceanic dead zones, causing fish kills.
I'm going to be talking to you guys about water pollution. There are several laws protecting water quality that were enacted in the U.S. during the 1970s. The most current version is the U.S. Clean Water Act. This requires each state to establish and monitor total daily maximum loads for pollutants. The Federal Clean Water Act lists water pollutants under several categories: conventional pollutants, priority pollutants, and non-conventional pollutants. Conventional pollutants include biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, fecal coliform bacteria, and oil and grease. Biochemical oxygen demand is a measure of oxygen depletion. Most of the bacteria in water who decompose organic matter requires dissolved oxygen to do so. The greater the proportion of decomposing organic matter in the water, the greater the oxygen demand. High organic content, or high BOD, thus depletes the dissolved oxygen in the water. Oxygen depletion, called hypoxia, can suffocate animals living in the water who depend on dissolved oxygen. Total suspended solids describes the concentration of fine particles suspended in water. TSS are quantified by turbidity, which is a measure of water clarity. With greater turbidity, less light can penetrate the water, which reduces photosynthesis and the production of dissolved oxygen. The greater the turbidity also increases water temperature. This lowers the concentration of dissolved oxygen. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen than colder water. Conventional pollutants. Biochemical oxygen demand is a measure of oxygen depletion. Total suspended solids describes the concentration of fine particles suspended in water. Oil and grease. Local water pollution problem. The BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010 is a major issue. Solutions to the BP oil spill. In July 2012, the Restore Act established the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council. This includes the governors of the states of Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. The secretaries of the U.S. Departments of Agriculture, the Army, Homeland Security, Commerce, and the Interior, and the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The Gulf states recommended that President Obama appointed the Secretary of Commerce as the council's first chair. On March 16th, the Secretary of Agriculture became the council chair. And on January 18th, 2018, the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency became the council chair. Some of the solutions to the BP oil spill includes the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council awarded grants and interagency agreements, 2017 annual report to Congress approved, 2017 commitment and planning support award, Restore Council approved projects and programs. Under the Council's selected restoration component, this is commonly referred to as the Bucket 2. The Restore Council has awarded grants and interagency agreements in each of the Gulf Coast states of Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, as well as Gulf-wide projects and programs, which are those projects or programs in 2 or more of these states. Council members will build upon existing restoration collaboration partnerships to identify and prioritize projects and programs for future funding under the Council's selected restoration component. Council members will undertake planning and collaboration activities over the 5-year period of these awards to meet their near-term need to develop proposals for the next FPO, while setting the foundation for long-term restoration success. The Council will review the effectiveness of these awards at year 4 and consider whether extending planning and commitment support funding beyond the 5-year period is needed to continue to meet the comprehensive plan commitments. Per the Restore Act, the only Restore Council members were able to apply for Council's selected restoration component funds. The Council members include the governors of the 5 Gulf states, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. And the heads of the 6 federal departments, the secretaries of the U.S. Departments of Agriculture, the Army, Commerce, Homeland Security, and the Interior, and the administrator of U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
What are microplastics and nanoparticles? Microplastics are small particles of plastic less than 5 millimeters in size. Particles of plastic less than a few micrometers in size are known as nanoparticles or nanoplastics. Microplastics and nanoparticles originate in several ways. Some form from larger plastics breaking into smaller pieces due to breakdown from the sun, wind, and ocean motion. These larger plastics, for example, can be plastic water bottles, plastic bags, cigarette butts, as well as commercial and recreational fishing equipment. Many plastics, with industrial purposes, start off as a microplastic. These, for example, products show up in shipping products, also debris and dust from construction sites. These microplastics and nanoparticles can also be found in cosmetics and synthetic fabric for clothing. These show up in stormwater runoff and litter, which bring the microplastics into our ocean waters. Potential hazards we face from these microplastics and nanoparticles not only endanger the environment, but could directly affect us humans. Chemicals comprising these plastics can be known carcinogens. They become ingested by marine life, and in turn, if the marine life is part of the human diet, the toxins and carcinogens are eaten and then absorbed by the human. Ways to help reduce these microplastics in the environment are simple. We can help by reducing our reliance on single-use plastics. Also, by buying cotton, silk, rayon, or other natural clothing instead of synthetic, and being conscious of your waste and water runoff. Local reasons for hope. The Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program has launched a microplastic research project. The Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program assists partners such as the Hardy County School District in obtaining training, funding, equipment, and other research tools necessary to monitoring microplastics in Southwest Florida's coastal waters. The Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program in Hardy County facilitated a microplastic sampling project with summer program students in 2017 at Cayo Costa State Park. Following the Gulf of Mexico Alliance Marine Debris Monitoring Program methods, students conducted water and sediment sampling along the undeveloped barrier islands. Florida Gulf Coast University is also involved, and the Florida Gulf Coast University Marine Station Vester will be the southernmost microplastic sampling station, allowing students and citizen scientists accessibility to the station's facilities to contribute further in identifying microplastics along the Gulf Coast. This information can be found in the magazine of Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program, Harbor Happenings, Summer 2017, Volume 21, Issue 2.
Cyanobacteria concerns in Southwest Florida. Eutrophication occurs when the environment becomes enriched with nutrients. The main nutrients that contribute to this problem are nitrogen and phosphorus. Eutrophication sets off a chain reaction within the ecosystem. It starts with an overabundance of plants and algae. Then, excess algae and plants decompose, producing carbon dioxide. The excess algae acts as a filter that blocks the sunlight that is needed for seagrasses to grow. The lack of sunlight from the algae causes those seagrasses to die. When seagrass and algae die and decay, they use up the oxygen in the water, which leads to low levels of dissolved oxygen, also known as hypoxia. Finally, high carbon dioxide levels lower the pH of the water, which leads to an event called ocean acidification. Excess nutrients come from agricultural and industrial mining runoff, stormwater runoff, and wastewater discharges and filling septic tanks. Excess nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, cause harmful algae blooms, which produce toxic or harmful events on organisms. Harmful algae blooms cause the loss of wetlands, seagrasses, and oysters. Wetlands are nature's kidneys and do not work when they are overloaded. Harmful algae blooms, specifically in Southwest Florida, can happen at any time of the year, but they most likely are to occur during summer and early fall. Harmful algae blooms that release the cyanobacterial microcystis, which are mainly found in fresh and brackish waters. They contain neurotoxins and hepatotoxins that are harmful to the liver and to the brain. These microcystis, neurotoxins, and hepatotoxins are harmful to humans during recreational water use, either through body contact, inadvertent ingestion, or inhalation of water droplets. They also create low oxygen dead zones that clogs the gills of fish and invertebrates and smothers corals and other submerged aquatic vegetation. These harmful algae blooms also hurt local economies through loss of commerce, tourism, and recreation. Here in Southwest Florida, nearly 50% of the nitrogen in the Caloosahatchee River comes from downstream of Lake Okeechobee. Cyanobacteria is a huge issue here within the Caloosahatchee River and Cape Coral canals. Sources of nutrients and bacteria in the Caloosahatchee estuary have been linked to urban runoff, septic tank failures, agricultural runoff, and wastewater and industrial sources. With all that being said about how harmful cyanobacteria is to the environment and the health of plants and animals, there are a number of organizations within the community that give us a reason for hope. Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership, also known as CHNEP, was founded in 1995 when the Charlotte Harbor estuarine system was recognized as an estuary of national concern. The work encompasses an area of over 5,000 miles of inland and coastal communities in 10 counties and 25 cities. They have a number of projects going on within the community that focus specifically on the issue of cyanobacteria. The Estuary Restoration in Southwest Florida project, they are planting seagrasses and oysters and conducting water quality monitoring. The Caloosahatchee project is a project to test the usage of an open cell foam called Aquaflex to absorb and remove excess nutrients and cyanobacteria. Aquaflex is a technology that was developed to assist in the cleanup during the BP oil spill that occurred in 2010. The foam pads work by soaking up floating debris like paper towels and then can be wrung out either mechanically or by hand. This project is a partnership between Sea and Shoreline Aquatic Restoration, Aquaflex, and Florida Gulf Coast University. The overall goals of this project are to improve water quality, lessen harmful effects of algal blooms, improve aquatic habitat by lessening the spread and intensity of cyanobacteria. Another project which CHNEP is working on is the quantification of submerged aquatic vegetation and its restoration benefits. Dredging has caused the Caloosahatchee River estuary to lose the majority of its oyster reefs and seagrass beds. Both oysters and seagrass beds are nutrient filters, and without them being in place, the nitrogen and the phosphorus that are flowing into the system are more likely to cause harmful algae blooms. This is a partnership with Angler Action Foundation, Sea and Shoreline LLC, Johnson Engineering, and Florida Gulf Coast University. The overall goals of this project are to increase interest and funding in seagrass restoration, plant additional seagrasses to help with excess nutrient filtering, and to decrease harmful algae bloom events. So outside of the local organizations, there are a lot of things that us citizens can do to help with the issue of cyanobacteria. We can use less fertilizers, especially during rainy season. We can create a native Florida landscape that doesn't require fertilizers and pesticides. And we can always make sure to pick up and dispose of pet waste because that adds excess nitrogen to the system. You too can help be part of the solution to keep Florida, specifically Southwest Florida, free of harmful algae blooms.
So the reason that I chose to go with red tide in the Southwest Florida area and the effects that it has on us here is because I'm on the water usually 3 to 4 days out of the week. And, before this, I lived on the East Coast where we don't have red tide and it doesn't really affect us. So we'd always hear about it, kind of he say, she say. And, no one was really able to visualize it. People were saying it's so bad. And, there was crazy amounts of fish kills, but you actually weren't able to visualize it. So once I moved here and I started, spending more time here in the local waterways and in Estero Bay and kind of off the coast a little bit, I saw how bad these fish kills were and how it really affected our ecosystem here super negatively, and it was quite shocking to me. So I kind of wanted to talk to everyone and kind of explain how red tide actually comes about into our waterways and organizations that are fighting to fix it and some progress that they've made so far. So red tide originally starts in Lake Okeechobee, which is in the center of our state. And we have a river that is right down the road from FGCU, probably about 30 minutes away, not very far at all, and that is called the Caloosahatchee River. So the Caloosahatchee runs all the way to Lake Okeechobee. They do connect through a series of lock systems that were put into place by the Army Corps of Engineers. And what happens is during the harvest season, all the surrounding land of Lake Okeechobee is, for the most part, farmland. Most of them is going to be sugarcane farms, but there's a mixture of different produce that come from Lake Okeechobee. So during the harvest season, these farmers are going to spray numerous amounts of pesticides all over their crops to ensure that they are going to get a good produce during that season and to help fight against different sorts of bacteria and different insects that tend to be attracted to those crops. So what happens is during the rainy season, or even through these farmers' agricultural systems or their sprinkler systems, what will happen is all these pesticides are washed off into the local waterways surrounding Lake Okeechobee or actually into the lake. And over time, once the rainy season does come, the lake actually fills up too much with water, and the Army Corps of Engineers are forced to pump this water out to lower the lake level. So that way we don't have any issues with levees erupting or any damage to the surrounding area of Lake Okeechobee. So this water is pumped out through the Caloosahatchee River. Like I said, it runs straight west, and it comes out 30 minutes probably north of FGCU, and all this all these pesticides that were originally sprayed on these crops are going to run through that water. They will end up into our bays, for example, Estero Bay, right along Bonita Beach. We see it a lot in Sanibel and the Captiva Islands, and these pesticides will create a huge algae bloom. What this algae bloom actually does is, as you can see in this top left photo, it creates this thick green algae on top of the surface. What this does is it actually chokes out the oxygen, and that's why we see such big fish kills. So this algae is going to absorb all the oxygen in the water, which deoxygenates the water, which takes the oxygen away from these fish here that we see in the top right photo. And these fish just end up dying. They end up, pretty much suffocating. They don't have any oxygenated air to breathe in their water systems, and they just die. And we see this with larger predators. We see this with smaller bait fish. We see it with everything from fish to birds to crabs. It really goes across the board, and it really destroys the whole food chain in a sense. Um, Not only are bigger predators being destroyed, but even small things such as shrimp and small bait fish that these bigger predators would normally feed on. And what ends up happening is even once red tide goes away, the fish that do survive, a lot of times they don't have anything to eat, and even fish die then from starvation. So now that we've kind of gone over some red tide concerns in Southwest Florida, we're going to talk about some reasons that we should have hope in some different organizations that are going to be fighting against red tide and kind of what their plans are and what they're all about. So on the left here, we have Oceana. This is the largest organization or the largest nonprofit organization that fights for marine pollution and sustainability in our oceans. Oceana is a worldwide and really well-known organization. They were founded in 2001. And really what they do is they target a lot of political campaigns. And when it comes to red tide, this is a really big um, topic when it comes to red tide, because a lot of this can be changed through government. So Oceana fights a lot for the flow of water to be released back to its natural flow. Originally, we never had an issue with red tide so many years ago, because originally the runoff of Lake Okeechobee did not run east and west, it ran straight south. So what would happen is it would actually dump out of the Florida Keys. Originally, that was the natural flow of water from Lake Okeechobee to the ocean. So what would happen, and the reason we never saw red tide in those days pretty much is because it was a much longer distance, and what would end up happening is by the time it reached the Florida Keys, it would already be filtrated through the water, and all the algae bloom wouldn't have time to survive, because eventually it does die off. It actually will choke itself out because there's not enough oxygen for it to survive after a while. So it wouldn't be able to maintain itself long enough to get to the Florida Keys, and that's why we never saw red tide in the Keys itself. But we do see it here now because it is a much shorter distance for it to travel east and west versus all the way south to the Keys. So Oceana is a big one. Not only do they fight political campaigns to help fight against um, the unnatural flow of water and to restore the natural flow of water south through the Keys, they also help protect and restore any damage that is done to the oceans. For example, they are really big on putting in artificial reefs. Artificial reefs help tremendously with red tide because they act as an aquifer or a filtration system for smaller marine mammals and larger marine mammals. So one artificial reef can actually produce 250,000 gallons of clean water a day. Not only that, but it also offers a lot of oxygen for the fish, and it also offers shelter for them. And they also help to fight against industrial fishing, which is a big thing in the Gulf of Mexico. Being that red tide kills so many fish, when we do have a bad, case of red tide come through, overfishing is a huge thing, and poachers are a huge thing, because if people keep poaching a fish and keep killing a fish that we don't have an abundance of, eventually we will just run out of that fish, and they go endangered and possibly extinct. So that's Oceana. The next one that I'm going to speak about is Captains for Clean Water, and I really wanted to focus on this one because it's local. If you've kind of been around like the boat docks or fishing a little bit, you've probably heard of this one. This is a really big one. Captains of Clean Water was founded by a bunch of local guides that local captains and local guides that were pretty much just tired of seeing how bad the environment was being affected by red tide, and that's really what they focus on, is just red tide. And what they do is they fight against the water management by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they do this by using science-based solutions and really planning out and doing all the work beforehand. So that way, when they propose it to government, it's kind of already said and done. All they have to do is approve of it and actually put it into motion. And what they did, their biggest thing that they're pushing is called the CERP, excuse me. And what the CERP stands for is the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. And really what it is it's the roadmap to restoring the Everglades, and that's how they quote it. It's pretty much the same thing as Oceania is kind of pushing, where they want to restore the natural flow of water from the southernmost point of Lake Okeechobee to the Florida Keys and through the Everglades instead of having it run east and west. Captains of Clean Water was originally founded in 2016, and they've had great progress. They've passed tons of bills and talked to Governor DeSantis multiple times, and they've really made a lot of progress since then, and they're continuing to fight, and they really have a large basis and a really good organization.